So up next, we have our military panel to discuss some general matters. So I think I'll just turn it over to Erlen without elaborating any more than that. Erlen, what's going on this weekend on the military side of things?
Well, I'm not going to go here, and thank you, by the way. I'm not going to do a military update, but I want to talk about something that we've been working a lot on or especially Daniele has been working a lot on, and it's a project that he started, I guess, during the Christmas break, where he first published one thread about FPV drones and some statistics pulled from Andrew's data, and that sparked what I would say has become a larger interest for this topic from Daniele, and he has also he's also showed us how incredibly powerful the data collection that Andrew is doing every day is when you want to analyze, for instance, the use of FPV drones on the battlefield. So I've also put the link in the description of the video to Daniele's article, and then I'm gonna try and show it here on the screen as well. Yep, it works. And welcome, Daniele. Can you hear me, Daniele?
Hey, while he gets his mic sorted, you guys had an Italian space recently, right? How'd that go?
Oh, that was good. We just had a spontaneous space in Italian. Yeah, me, Daniele, and Pier Giorgio. It was a very interesting discussion, mainly about Russian propaganda in Italy, which is a whole nother topic. Since Daniele is maybe AFK, I'm not sure. Maybe Andrew, do you want to explain what actually the data Daniele has analyzed? What is it? Like, where does it come from?
Okay, so me and Gick, we go through Telegram every day, all day, literally all day, and we gather as many videos as we can from as many telegrams as we can. I think we have like 1,100 sources at this point. It's a very large number, and we go through. We try to geolocate as much as possible. We try to log as much as possible. Sometimes we can't log things because we run out of time. And by logging, I mean you go like there might be a 1 minute clip, and the 1 minute clip may be made up of 35 2-second long clips that are all edited together. So you go through and separate each of those like 2-second long clips into a separate data entry where you say what happens, maybe try to geolocate it, etc. So the database that we have is all of these logs added up. The database that Daniela is looking at is our main database. This database started in July, I think July 13th, so it does not go back all the way. We do have data prior to that. It's not as good, and it's not in this database. So anyways, so July 13th is really when we started very seriously logging things, and even then, like the first like 2 or 3 weeks were not that great. It was kind of like partial, and then probably like August onwards is a very good data set. So yeah, that's pretty much what the data is. A lot of the things that Daniela is looking at is piggybacking on top of I mean, the database isn't really meant to be used the way that Danielle is using it. So he's piggybacking on top of little things that I was doing to log things a little bit easier. because the geolocation is really kind of what we're going for. It's more important to us to geolocate things. So when I go through and break a video into its like 20 or 30 or whatever constituent clips, I don't necessarily geolocate it as I do it, but I do like write down generally like 5 words in like 5 words what happened in the clip. And so it's like trench got hit, house is hit, or something like that, or like a tank, or whatever. It's like a few words just describing it, and he's using that to get a lot of data. Now there are caveats to this because that data is stored in the geolocation column of the data. So if we do geolocate something, that data is then lost, which makes Daniela sad. So there are caveats to this, and we're kind of doing our best. It really is mostly just me and Gick. It's like a 2-person job. It's like 2 people doing the job of like probably 20 people, to be honest. And so yeah, that's pretty much what the data is.
Yeah. So basically, Daniele had to be in very close contact with you to be able to use the data in the way he wanted to, and that's what at least I've observed. And he's also gone down and been trying to help you guys breaking up more of these videos to get more meaningful data out of it, and so the sample is better. But yeah, I know that you and Geek are basically working on this every day. But yeah, the article I think is it's interesting for the people who are looking at FPV drones with interest, and also for if you just want to kind of get a glimpse of the scale here. But the sample, I just want to say that the sample size is not nowhere near the total amount of what we expect to be the usage of FPV drones. But those are the documented instances.
Yeah, and just to throw this out there, like right now, I just added a line to our database, and this line is, it's a line 24,700. So that's how many entries we have since July 13th. So it's 24,700, and I don't know that it probably works out to like 130 a day, something like that. So yeah, that's what we have.
Yeah, I hear that Daniele might be with us now.
Yeah, hello. Sorry, I had some technical issues, as always.
No worries. So yeah, why did you have to do this update on your research, Daniele?
Oh well, I think mainly because it's an ongoing research. I don't think it will never end until the end of the war, probably. And I think the more we work together with Andrew, and even on my own by trying to understand the data, the better the way on how we presented this data will be. In all honesty, a lot of things has been changed respect to the first article because, of course, first of all, looks like much nicer into a visual point of view. We added a lot of I did a lot of effort in order to script the data in order to be shown using, for example, HTML as you're doing right now, so you can navigate through the data in a much easier but also involving way. So you're not just presented as some graph, but you can actually do something. And the map is like a very big improvement, but has some flaw as well because some essentially not all the data that we use in the plots are actually all geolocated. So some are missing, of course. But what is very important here, in particular for the map, is that the map allows us to have a very good understanding on what's going on. because you may lose 10, 20, but there are still other 600, 800 there. So it is an enormous amount. And the precision of the geolocation, which is due to the fact that, okay, nowadays everyone has a GPS, but also the fact that Geek and Andrew have done a very big job in verifying and improving the geolocation where it was available, or where it wasn't, they just geolocated. And this requires a lot of time. You can't do this by AI, essentially. You need to spend a lot of time, and this need to be recognized to both Andrew and Geek. And I have access to the database, so I am trying to tonight. I promise. Yesterday was too tired, but the database is huge, and not sometimes you have to break away. You have to do what we call breakdown. So you have a single video with 10, 20, 30 videos inside, and you have to divide them by categories, by type of attack, because sometimes there are more attack, not all FPV, all shelling, and so on.
Yeah, while you were talking, I was just trying to show that on the heat map here, you will actually find these attacks on Andrew's map as well.
Yeah. Now there is only an issue. The map doesn't show you the date. So you have to go in the text that I wrote to know that is for January, around the last week of January. And but in the future, I will add the possibility to show the data on the map, as because by anyway, we are using the same map. I didn't know that this type of map is from a Ukrainian company. Essentially, is free of use, and yeah, you say it's the same. But I'm using the urban one because it's easier for me to see the different roads, terrain, and if you have the data here, the date here, you could essentially look at Andrew's map, look here, and you would see exactly the same. I agree with you.
Yeah. But yeah, there's, and also like I want to emphasize that you've only analyzed the FPV drone use, but as you can see, they have these little symbols that represent an FPV strike. But then you also have a bunch of other incidents that are mapped. So if you're not familiar with Andrew's map, you'll see that there's a whole lot of different symbols, and they represent different strikes or events.
Yeah, absolutely. And for example,
and you can click them
yeah.
and get the source and the text, etc.
Yep. And sometimes that includes an image. Yep. And these are all entries in the database, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Everything that you.
The gold ones are the ones of the white ring is a different database.
Okay.
I have two databases. One is a geolocated database, which is what Daniele is looking at, and then I have a separate database that's just for like public reports, like from governors, etc. That's a completely different database, and those have a white ring, and they never like, well, they sometimes have images, but they're not geolocated. They're just kind of like they're placed like roughly where the report said. So yeah, the yellow ones are geolocated and are in the database Daniele is using.
And yeah, so what did you find, Daniele?
Oh, well, first of all, that data is very, very, very important. I mean, the amount of information that you can extrapolate from all the data that Andrew and Geek are collecting is very valuable for historical reason. I guess also in some extent, let's say, at least at an academic level, on a military defense thing, because I'm starting, apart looking at the video gives you a lot of understanding of how troop moves and what they do, but also by looking at the attack, where they are, on what and which sequence, you can start to look on how they do things. And the analysis essentially is going through the numbers initially, and the numbers show us that for the data that we have collected and which I was able to post-process, because there are some other hidden data that I will try later to carry on, because also the database evolved during the months, and the total number looks like, as you're showing, is in favor of Ukraine. But if you look at the progression, we can see that Russian are essentially increasing. If you go down to the conclusion, you will see that at the very end, yeah, this one. Now, apart the error band that probably I will have to modify this, I was very late when I decided to publish. So this error band doesn't mean very much at this point. But the very important things is the trend. The trend is just a fit. And you can see that the Russian one are essentially steadily going up, and the Ukrainian one are starting to, kind of deflect. Now, I will try to update with the full January data to have a final conclusion, because these are missing this last week, and there were a lot of activity. Andrew, as you remember, Andrew told us that there were videos with 97 attacks. So who knows at the end which will be the outcome. But for sure, first, the Russians are massively using drone against buildings, which is fairly not new, because especially for Andrew that was tracking this for months, but for the general public who do not have much attention on these, despite sometimes we see attack of this type, this is systematic. Especially in Marinka, they are actually bombing they are demolishing house by house. And in the article I was showing how these geolocation are very effective. Yeah, if you go down where we show some geolocation. So this is essentially, yeah, that's a residential area, and a lot of strike were located in the northern part of this body of water, and especially located on houses. And this essentially, if you look on the right, you have the Russian advancing, and on the left you have the Ukrainian line, the defensive position. And as soon as the Russian advance, you will see FPV drone activity aimed to deter or impede the defensive position. So essentially denied to the defender the capability of entrenching and essentially holding position by simply removing even a piece of concrete. I remember an example that Andrew made about Russian even destroying a slab of concrete that were perfect hiding position to shoot. This is another example of how powerful and accurate are the data. This is now is more than a week old, but this is a defensive position, a very strong defensive position of the Ukrainians, still in Ukrainian hand, which has been hit by several FPV drone attack. And you can see more or less they end up in that building in upper left, the other one just below, and then probably around that trench line. So as you can see, this looks like not unprecise attack, but FPV are very, very precise, and I think are going to change also how trenches are utilized, because one thing that emerged is the fact that trenches were already dangerous places, but with the advent of FPV drone, trenches can be very, very dangerous as well. Above there is an example of these while I was discussing. Yeah, so this is a good example. So this is an example where an FPV drone didn't manage to hit the internal part of the trench, because the guys who manned this trench did a very good job in building quite high embankment on the side, and furthermore there was a lot of foliage and other things that impeded the FPV operator to have a precise dive into the trench. So he ended up into the embankment without damaging the trench. Instead, before just few if you scroll up, you will see like an example, one of the many examples where a drone is essentially coming from the top, essentially going down, and then just before turning and deep diving inside a hole. This essentially was just a hole inside the tree line, and of course you can see even by the explosion, exploded exactly inside. So this is a terrific type of weapon, because you feel safe in the trench, but now you are not anymore unless the defensive position is very, very well digged in, and if you are also lucky, honestly, because at the moment I don't see, apart in electronic warfare, anything that can help very much in the defense of trench line against this type of threat.
Yeah,
I don't know if Andrew has.
I have an anecdote that's very different. I mean, this has happened multiple times, but it's amazing to me because okay, so what the Russians did is they assaulted the trench with like 6 guys, and what they did is they used FPV drones to push the Ukrainians into one part of the trench, and then they would throw grenades at them. And when the Ukrainians would run away from the grenades, they would hit them with FPV drones to push them back into that spot, and they just kept doing that until they were all gone, basically. So the FPV drones have a lot of uses in trench warfare that aren't just bombardment. It really makes trench warfare very terrifying.
Yeah, that's I think one of the scariest things that I saw. I think I know the video that you are referring, and there are also other videos where and we were looking at this video together a few days ago of an FPV drone, was Ukrainian this time. Essentially, we don't know if this drone was doing some aerial bombing, because there is also this other type of attack that essentially the drone doesn't plumb on the target, but just release a bomb, and then it is able to still flying around. And this drone was essentially chasing other Russian soldier, and these were abandoning their trenching position, thinking that it was an FPV drone with a charge, and they end up in a field, and they were completely scared about that. So this just to shine a bit of light on how terrifying it have to be now. Trench warfare, as Andrew said, is very much terrifying. And returning to the rest of the article, the article show, of course, the numbers, and of course the number are divided into infantry, vehicles, and position. Now, on vehicles, we still see overall superiority of Ukrainian side, but this is possibly mainly because Russian are using more vehicle, and it's very likely about that. And the good thing is that I don't see a very much difference in the area of infantry, which is the first one that I discussed in the article. And despite Russians are a bit ahead now, and maybe there are also attacks that we don't know about because they are not in the database, and it's possible that we miss them. This gap is not that huge, but if you join these with the number of attacks on position, and sometimes position and infantry can be mixed, because when they hit a trench full of soldiers, you consider this an attack on position, an attack of infantry. So this is also difficult sometimes. So they get mixed as well sometimes. So to close up, the overall number are increasing on both sides. Russia is steadily going on its route, and if the latest data will confirm that respect to Russia, Ukraine has been reached a plateau. Well, this is a bad sign for Ukraine, and because this means that at some point Russia will surpass, and all these advantages that has been built, especially at the beginning, will be essentially gone, which is not something dramatic, but of course means that they don't have anymore this big advantage. And with the advent of night vision drones, which I still think is a very niche and specific type of munition that the Russians are using exactly for striking a precise target that they need to destroy, like boats on the Dnipro. What really will be important is understanding how you can extend the range of your drones, how you can bring more lethal payload with your drones. So essentially how these drones will evolve in terms of technology. And one very particular thing that fascinates me on this on this topic is that both start at the same level, because both started with the same approach, same type of fuse, and now we start to see different philosophies branching out. So it will be very interesting to see how each side will decide to invest what he has to try to take an edge on the adversary.
So Daniele, before we wrap the segment up, there was one question from Kellen Dunn, which is the gap between drone development clearer now between Ukraine and Russia, who has superior technology and who's doing more strikes? So I think you clarified pretty clearly that our data doesn't quite cover the specifics of each drone strike, right? We can't really say what kind of drone, how good the strike wound up being, and these types of things. All we're doing, or I shouldn't even say we, all Andrew is doing is they're collecting that data, confirming it, making sure it happened, it's not a repeat of an incident, etc. And then, it's a strike, right? And you guys are cataloging that, right? So that's what the data is. So we can't really speak to the technology itself, but in terms of the numbers, I think that one graph was the final graph that you had was is a pretty clear answer to that question, right? Which is the capabilities. Ukraine still seems to be a little bit ahead in this race, but like both sides are kind of moving linearly in that direction. Like, in other words, Russia is making every effort to increase their production, and like Ukraine has to keep every effort to keep that lead. Like it's that lead is not guaranteed by any means. I mean, would you agree with that, or do you think that there's like a different conclusion you would draw?
No, I think this is pretty much the conclusion. And regarding technology, I mean, videos can tell you about what type of fuse. You can start to look at the complexity of the drone from what you can see, but it's very difficult to understand anything more. The only thing that you have to do is try to recover drones and then start to analyze them. From what we now regarding the thermal, I know that me and Andrew have a different opinion on that. I think that the fact that they are using thermals and the Ukrainians are not is not a problem of money or not being backed from the state or whatever, but it's also only an opportunity thing. So probably for Russian, is much more valuable to use drones during night to hit specific target. And I think to me, the use on both make completely sense. Boats are very, very slow. It's very important to, and also they operate mostly in darkness and in silence in order to not be spotted. So I think that looking at the fact that they are deploying thermals and say, oh, they have an edge on technology on drone. No, it's just a camera. They just bought a camera and plug in. I'm sure Ukraine can do the same if they really want, but I don't think Ukrainians are now focusing on night vision, but in quantity and trying to have like a supply chain that can sustain a long effort, because this is what really matters. And when you scale up, especially you scale up quantity, you need also quality check. So you need to be sure that if you double, triple your production, your drone is still at the same quality. And one of the posts that one of the thread regarding Chinese drone, and another one from Daniel R about the welding station of Russian FPV drone operator that have to weld their drone, which happen also in Ukraine. I mean, many operators confirm this. They have to learn how to weld. they did a very crap job, and some board were quite outdated. So I think there are many things that tell us that at the moment, technology wise, they still more or less in advantage. Someone has an advantage on some side, someone has an advantage on the other side. But I think also how they want to develop these technology. For example, there was Erland posted a few days ago on the Discord about this how you call mothership that deploy FPV from the Ukrainian side, and there was this interview with a Russian soldier that was terrified about this. So you know what I mean, developing strategy, developing new ways of using that technology. This is what is going to define the advantage and also the increase in technology, not just placing a camera, because placing a camera is something that can be done, is nothing important. Or as Samuel Bennett was discussing about the potential use of AI or machine learning. I don't know which one of they refer to, but to essentially guide the drone when signal is lost. Personally, I don't think we can claim that they are developing AI because they say they have the AI. We need a clear evidence of that, a clear proof. And it's very difficult because it's not a component. It's a code, is something that you cannot see by the outside.
Thanks, Daniele. Maybe Andrew. Oh, go ahead.
I think Russia has a pretty big technological advantage. They have access to a lot more different types of drones. They have access to much more expensive drones in general. I disagree that they're using night vision to mostly attack boats. I don't think that's true because their main night vision unit is in Novomykhailivka, and that's nowhere near boats. So they're using so from what I can tell, Russia has, I think, 3 different night vision drone units that are developing 3 completely different forms of night vision. So I believe one of them is using a thermal camera, and those are in like Novomykhailivka. And then I think one is using a standard like night vision camera, and then another is using a different technology. I think it's LiDAR or something. Anyway, they're all 3 of them are using completely different technologies, and they're testing out which works the best. And they operate in different areas. I think this type of development that you see in the Russian drone systems, that they have multiple parallel development cycles going on. They test out new technologies much more frequently and almost always before Ukraine ever gets to it. For example, they were using these like ridiculously giant bombs on some of their drones, which I don't think they do anymore, but they tested out to see if that worked. They've done a lot of things in this area where I think they are ahead of the curve with regards to Ukraine. Ukraine always seems to be playing catch up in every category in this, and it's unfortunate. And I think a big part of it is that the Ukrainian government isn't really investing money in drones. If you remember back, they said that we don't have time to invest in wedding toys or whatever he said. I think the Ukrainian government doesn't really respect drones very much. A lot of it is coming from either the soldiers doing things themselves or through volunteers giving money. Whereas I think in the Russian military, it's coming more centralized. It's coming more from the top, and I think it's more organized and better funded. So I think this is a very important issue that Ukraine needs to figure out. Like Ukraine just needs to take drones more seriously. It's absurd to me that they haven't yet at this point in this war. It's completely crazy. But yeah, I think Russia does have the technological advantage and the initiative and the money.
Yeah, I do remember Putin recently announced an investment. I think like something equivalent of like $2 billion US, something like that, into drone programs. As you said, it's been a sustained interest that they've had in drones for many years. So it's something I think Ukraine, as you said, needs to take very seriously. They have a slight lead, at least according to the raw data, in terms of numbers, but like that's really not something that can be counted on, and there's a lot of areas where Russia could easily get an advantage here, and it could be bad for Ukraine. So it's something that Western partners, especially, and Ukraine just in general, needs to take more seriously, as they don't want to be comfortable in this drone category at all, I think. And anything else, Andrew?
One thing to note is that Ukraine has been using more night vision drones lately, like over the past week, which is interesting. I don't know if they're like posting these just to like feel better, like maybe these are old videos that they're just posting now, or if they're actually flying more of these drones. And also another thing that I want to point out that I think a lot of people overlook is that Russia has the Scalpel drone. I think people look at a lot of footage and they assume everything is a Lancet, but they actually have the Scalpel, and the Scalpel is a much cheaper version of the Lancet. Apparently, I mean, we don't actually know, but that's what they say. And it attacks much lower level targets. So they attack infantry, they attack boats, they attack bunkers, things that they wouldn't use a Lancet for, because a Lancet is way too expensive. So the Scalpel has a night vision capabilities. It has thermal cameras, which is very important to keep in mind.
Yeah, thanks, guys. So, Erland, I think unless we have anything else for the segment, we can move to maybe our next impromptu segment here. Yeah?
Yeah, I'm done.
Beautiful. Okay, so I guess we have a rare treat today. We want to thank German Aid to Ukraine for staying up in the wee hours of Europe to bring this to us. So apparently Zelensky's having a speech in Germany at the moment, live. And of course, the broadcast is very annoyingly in the middle of that. But German Aid's been paying attention to it, and he wanted to just share some of the information that was explained during the interview. So over to you, German Aid to Ukraine.
Yeah, thanks. I just want to point out it's actually not live. I first misread that today. This is like pre-recorded, so they published now like an announcement site. And there was one very interesting quote from Zelensky, and he basically said that Taurus isn't being delivered to Ukraine right now. It's not the fault of Scholz. He didn't provide any information on why is this the case. But if that's true, I think that has two reasons. And first of all, he also said there are many reasons, but he can't talk about them publicly, why Germany is not delivering the Taurus. There are, from my side, two reasons which I think Zelensky would accept as okay arguments that Germany won't be delivering them to Ukraine. And I'm excluding the possibility that the US is maybe blocking somehow. Just focusing on our own parliament or the political system, I would say either his own party is like blocking him, which I don't think is actually true, but there is a possibility. There's a strong anti-Taurus and less aid segment in the SPD, but I don't think that's so strong that Scholz is actually just listening to them and ignoring everybody else, because there is a vast majority in other political parties in Germany, except of course for the left ones or for the right ones. So basically, except for everyone who, am I allowed to say Putin's life? I'm sure I'm not allowed to say that. Sorry. The
stream
second
is not made for kids. I crossed that option out when I planned the stream.
Okay, so I can basically say except for everyone who sucks Putin's dick, right? And okay, perfect. And the second possibility, which like nobody is really talking about is that Scholz thinks there needs to be, and that's, by the way, was also in the news like a couple of months ago, but this like underwent, nobody really covered that for some reason. Scholz thinks that he needs Bundeswehr soldiers in Ukraine not to program the cruise missiles, which everyone was talking about, to monitor the programming by the Ukrainian soldiers to make sure they are not like sending them to Russia, whatever. And doesn't matter how likely this is, just want to point that out, that this is a possibility. And basically then, since we are sending soldiers there to monitor, and I want to mention that I'm not sure, was it Pistorius or Scholz or our defense minister or our chancellor, he said that the UK and France are doing the same thing. So if that's true, and I'm not sure if it's true, the UK and France have also soldiers in Ukraine who monitor the programming of the cruise missiles. And if that's the case, during our parliamentary system, we would have need a Bundestagsmandat for it. But if we would have, so the political persons in the Bundestags need to vote on it, they could, in theory, take such a deployment to the Federal Constitutional Court and take legal action against it. And it is, I mean, to be honest, it's almost very certain that all political people from the AfD or from the left party would actually do so, because they won't prevent a delivery of Taurus to Ukraine. And then the government might be forced to disclose sensitive military information about the Taurus in a public hearing. And Scholz wants to prevent this. This is like my second theory, which I think would be acceptable for Zelensky, because there are a lot of arguments or theories why Taurus won't be delivered to Ukraine, but I don't think that that Zelensky would actually accept a lot of these statements and defend Scholz publicly about it. So it must be something, if that's true what he's saying, it must be something where he says, okay, I can accept that, it's not Scholz's fault. He is basically forced to prevent a delivery to Ukraine. So just
I have an even easier explanation.
Yeah, go ahead.
It will take many months to make the Taurus work with the airframes that Ukraine has. And it could be that they recently started this process and they know they have another, 4 to 6 months to go, and they can't deliver the missiles until that program is complete. And Zelensky is just saying, all right, well, we'll wait for it to be done then.
Yeah, I know what you mean. You could be right, of course, but from what we hear from basically all political people involved, from the manufacturer, from basically everyone, like there was the government asked about like doing geo-blocking, doing like how much time would be needed for refurbishment, the other Taurus which are not operational right now. And basically it ended at asking and no action were taken. That's at least the public information I or everyone else hears from every source. But of course, it could be that it's like a super secret and everyone is just giving out fake information about it to just get over the time until the Taurus is actually ready. Could be true, Maz.
If that is the case, that would be wonderful compared to what happens with the ATACMS. Having operational security about a program like that tight could be very, very important, especially when it comes to the effects that you want the delivery of the weapon to have. And the ATACMS had quite a considerable effect, even though there were just 20 of them or less. But the effect could have been even greater if the information wasn't leaked just a couple of days before they shot them. So hopefully that's the case. I would be very happy if that's that's how it plays out.
Yeah.
I'm
How-
curious. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to ask Gao, are you happy that there's constantly new information or these kind of droplets of information about Taurus every day?
No, not at all. Really not at all. Most people would think, yeah, maybe it's very good, but for me, as a person who informs on people on a regular basis about it, it's kind of annoying because there's like no real statement. I mean, we see that now with the Ringtausch issue with Great Britain. One newspaper is saying that UK offered, another newspaper saying Germany offered, one newspaper saying Germany is negotiating with France and with the UK. Another German news media says it's not negotiating with France, it's negotiating with Italy about the delivery of Storm Shadows. It's just so many information, nothing gets confirmed, and basically one party says this, another party says this, and I get every day the same questions, or at least when I report about Taurus, I get all the time the same questions and same responses. What's it about that Scholz is warmonger or not a warmonger,
Coward.
Scholz has no balls and whatever. It's basically every time the same. And I mean, if we would get some information which actually gets confirmed, but all the people do is report on something, nothing gets confirmed, and it won't do us any good except for that Germany is being constantly hated on for the same topic. And I personally believe, of course, the shitstorm would be much more greater if, for example, Scholz basically would just say, no, we don't want to deliver Taurus, and this is my last word. Of course, the shitstorm will be enormous, but I think in like 1 month or 2 months, it would be like basically mostly gone away. Not all, of course, but most people would just focus on different stories because so far Germany has delivered everything else Ukraine wanted. Of course, after some time, after some debates, and we're good in that, and I don't know why we're doing this. But Germany is delivering constantly new aid to Ukraine on a massive, massive scale. And by just dropping out this kind of information in this article, it just stays in our minds all the time, and people get frustrated over and over again. And yeah, sorry, shouldn't talk so much.
No, it's fine. And I just want to clarify for our listeners, like what the Ringtausch you mentioned. It's like a circular exchange. It's a German word, and it's just the specific one he's referring to here. It came out in the press that like Germany wanted to, or again, it was unclear whose idea this was. It sounds like a Germany thing, but I'll leave that to the listener. The point is, the offer was floated by someone for Germany to export Taurus missiles to the UK so that the UK could export Storm Shadows to Ukraine, right? That was like the plan. As it's bananas. It sounds bananas. Anyways, I just wanted to explain that to the listeners. And then there was one other thing I wanted to mention with you. Oh, right. The vote. We mentioned, I think 2 weeks ago or last week, that there was a vote. And as you mentioned, it was purely a political matter. It's really up to other forces like this. The Bundestag doesn't make this decision. But you mentioned like that the government seems to be behind Scholz on the issue at the very least. That's what the vote kind of indicated. So I was curious, like, do you think that they're privy to this information that Zelensky just mentioned and that might have affected the vote? Like, is that related at all or no?
I actually don't think that it is related. All I can just say is that the vote which was already done like a couple of weeks ago, like you said, wasn't a real vote because it was clear that the ruling parties in Germany would vote against it. There was like reported days or even hours before the vote actually took place, so it wasn't a surprise. And to also note, and we also talked about this, I believe 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago was the vote, and reported about it, that the ruling parties, so the SPD, the FDP, and the Greens, have actually already said on the same day that where they rejected the CDU motion, that they themselves will introduce an own motion also on the supply of Taurus cruise missiles to Ukraine in the Bundestag in February. So, yeah, we will see. We will see. I mean, it's the same motion, so it will have no binding power. So even if everyone votes with yes, it doesn't mean anything except that the pressure is increasing. But it shows that the large majority of also the ruling parties in Germany, and a lot of people always forget that, are in favor of a delivery. There's only a few people which are actually publicly very vocal about it, but most people vote differently or vote in favor of what the chancellor says. And when Scholz would say we will deliver, they are not against it. They are just trying to protect their political party, I would say. And yeah, so we have to see what actually first of all, what are the reasons Zelensky is not talking about publicly, or he can't publicly talk about? Because when there are some reasons which are permanently, then we never see Taurus in Ukraine. I mean, there's a reason why we haven't sent them in the last year, and yeah, it purely depends on the reasons, but they have to go public. Until they are not going public, these reasons, the shitstorm will just continue. We will see news articles about a possible Taurus delivery like every week, and consistent asking, and someone who is involved in the process basically needs to step up and fucking say the honest truth. What is it about? What is happening? Why isn't it working? Until this happened, like even in 5 years, people are still writing articles about the Taurus and that Germany is not delivering the Taurus. And I hope that in 6 years, Ukraine doesn't need Taurus anymore. But you get my point. Someone needs to step up and someone needs to step up and talk the honest truth. So yeah, I shut up now.